Blessed are you, Adonai, the Blessed One. Blessed are you, Adonai, the Blessed One, forever and ever. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, who selected us from all of the peoples and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen. Noach. I have to tell you this Torah portion, every time Rabbi goes somewhere and he asks me to teach for him, I start studying much earlier than I normally do. I get a little nervous, but this Torah portion really, there's so much in there that I think we just commonly just read over and take for granted. Today, we're not going to take it for granted. We're going to parse this out. My goal is to make each and every one of you Torah detectives. I want you to go search on your own. I want you to look for patterns, parallels. I want you to find these jewels that are there in Scripture, hidden, and that the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, reveals these diamonds to you that are there. These are the offsprings of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, perfect. He was in his generations. And Noah walked with God. If you stand for the Torah reading, please. Ele toldot Noach. Noach ish zadek tamim haya. Bedorato et haElohim. Hit halek Noach. And Noah walked with God. Amen. Thank you. As I said, if I had one goal for you, is obviously my goal is to encourage you to search the Scriptures out for yourselves. You should test everything. You should look into the Scriptures on your own. But I know that most of you do that here. My goal is to really make you, like I said, like investigators, detectives, to get on the trail of these things in the Torah. You know, Yeshua said, Moses wrote about me. And I think today in Noach, you're going to see, indeed, Yeshua's in this Torah portion. Paul, if you could read Genesis 6:9 to 8:11, please. And I'm sorry I don't have it on the screen, but.
This is the genealogy of Noach. Noach was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God, and Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and outside with pitch. And this is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. You shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark in its side. You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks. And behold, I myself am bringing floodwaters on the earth to destroy from under heaven all flesh, in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2, every sort, into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. of the birds after their kind, of animals after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. 2 of every kind will come to you to keep them alive. And you shall take for yourself of all food that is eaten, and you shall gather it to yourself, and it shall be food for you and for them. Thus Noach did, according to all that God commanded him, so he did. Then the Lord said to Noah, Come into the ark, you and all your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. You shall take with you 7 each of every clean animal, a male and his female, 2 each of animals that are unclean, a male and his female. Also 7 each of the birds of the air, male and female, to keep the species alive on the face of all the earth. After 7 more days I will cause it to rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and I will destroy from the face of the earth all living things that I have made. And Noah did according to all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters were on the earth. So Noah, with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives, went into the ark because of the waters of the flood, of clean animals, of animals that are unclean, of birds, and of everything that creeps on the earth. 2 by 2 they went into the ark to Noah, male and female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were open. And the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, entered the ark. They and every beast after its kind, all cattle after their kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, every bird of every sort. And they went into the ark to Noah, 2 by 2, of all flesh, in which is the breath of life. So those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. Now the flood was on the earth 40 days. The waters increased and lifted up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and greatly increased on the earth, and the ark moved about on the surface of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly on the earth, and all the high hills under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed 15 cubits upward, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds and cattle and beasts, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of the Spirit of life, all that was on the dry land died. So he destroyed all living things which were on the face of the ground, both man and cattle, creeping thing, and bird of the air. They were destroyed from the earth. Only Noah and those who were with him in the ark remained alive, and the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. Then God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the animals that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were also stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters receded continually from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the waters decreased. Then the ark rested in the 7th month, the 17th day of the month, on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Then he sent out a raven, which kept going to and fro until the waters had dried up from the earth. He also sent out from himself a dove to see if the waters had receded from the face of the ground. But the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot, and she returned into the ark to him, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and drew her into the ark to himself. And he waited yet another 7 days, and again he sent the dove out from the ark. Then the dove came to him in the evening, and behold, a freshly plucked olive leaf was in her mouth. And Noah knew that the waters had receded from the earth.
Thank you, Paul. Gopher wood, the wood that the ark was made of. Genesis 6:14.
Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch.
So it may surprise you that gopher wood has nothing to do with gophers, the animals. It is it's a word that's very difficult to determine the origin of. It has a Aramaic version of the word, a Hebrew version of the word. So the probable meaning, the gopher, it says the probable meaning is to house in, a word that its original meaning. But it is commonly translated as cypress, and is believed to be a species of cypress tree. So why is this important? How can we trail this and make any importance of this cypress? 1 Kings 6:14-15.
So Solomon built the temple and finished it, and he built the inside walls of the temple with cedar boards. From the floor of the temple to the ceiling, he paneled the inside with wood, and he covered the floor of the temple with planks of cypress.
So cypress here is, the language has now evolved somewhat and is now beroshim. Almost sounds like beroshit, but it's beroshim. So what we see is that the ark is made of a wood that separates man in the ark, life, from outside of the ark, death. We see the floor of the temple separating life and death in the earth. We see this correlation in the cypress wood. So everything has meaning when it comes to the Torah. The cypress wood is also part of that meaning. So berosh, which is cypress, beroshim, cypress, plural, means just that, a cypress tree or a fir tree. In my studies, they're somewhat related and as the species go. So Isaiah 55:13 says, instead of the thorn shall come up the cypress tree, and instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle tree. And it shall be to the Lord for a name. The cypress tree is associated with his name, for an everlasting sign that shall not be cut off, not die. Death and being cut off are synonymous in Hebrew. So we see that the cypress has a ton of meaning here. So normally we just, the ark was made of cypress wood, and we keep reading. But it has a lot to do with the name of the Lord, the name of Adonai. A window. I found this really just kind of blew me away. Genesis 6:16. Thank you, Paul.
You shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark in its side. You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks.
So that word in Hebrew for window is sohar. And it means light or radiance, a window, or noon. We're going to see some significance of why it may be related to noon, associated with noonday. So Genesis 8:6, if we keep reading, it says, so it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window. But it's a different word. It's halon. It says, so it came to pass after 40 days, Noah opened the window, the halon of the ark, which he had made. And of course, he releases the dove and the raven from this portal. But it's not sohar. So it's something different. Halon means a window or a perforation. Why is that important? We will see. John 8:12 says, and Yeshua spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Remember the meaning of Zohar, radiance and light. John 12:46, I have come as a light into the world, that whoever believes in me shall not abide in darkness. think I missed one. No, I didn't. Light. Psalms 27:1 says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, my Yeshua." That's the Hebrew word for salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? In Revelation 21:23, in that day it says, the city had no need of the sun or of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God illuminated it. The Lamb is the light. The Sohar? Perhaps. Rooms. We're going to go back to Genesis 6:14. Thank you, Paul.
Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch.
That word is kanim. It's a plural. Basically, it means rooms or, well, nestlings or chambers. Remember I said at the beginning, we want to, to make you a Torah detective, I want you to look for patterns of things. So we see the ark being made with these rooms, these nestlings, these chambers. John 14:2 says, "In my Father's house are many mansions." That's a poor translation. If it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. Just as he prepared Noah he equipped Noah and directed Noah to prepare an ark, he one day will have a place for us to receive us in. He will have a nestling for us. That word in Hebrew is mayonot, means rooms or dormitory. In the Greek, which obviously the Brit Hadashah was translated into, it's the word monē in Greek, which is really the same, a stay, a residence, or an abode. Not much difference in the meaning of it. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the science. We're going to chase a lot of things here today, and we're going to try to bring it all together at the end. Fountains of the deep. Genesis 7:11. Thank you, Paul.
In the 600th year of Noach's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened.
The fountains of the deep. Now, most of us know that it wasn't just rain that flooded the earth, that it's fountains of the deep. It was hugely cataclysmic. Tectonic plates moving. The earth was in turmoil. It was literally destroying itself. We're going to see it's destroying itself not only from without, but from within. The word, therefore, broken up is the word nibkeu, means to split, to divide, or to break open. Now, every now and then, even the unbelieving scientific world validates much of what we know and that the Torah says about the Great Flood. So the green emerald that you see on the screen is referred to as olivine. The blue is ringwoodite. I'm going to read this to you, and just if you bear with me, you're going to find this extremely interesting. This is from Scientific America, March 12, 2014. A battered diamond that survived a trip from hell confirms a long-held theory. Earth's mantle holds an ocean's worth of water. another ocean's worth of water below the ocean. It's actually, this is a quote, it's actually the confirmation that there is a very, very large amount of water that's trapped in a really distinct layer in the deep earth, said Graham Pearson, lead study author and a geochemist at the University of Alberta in Canada. The findings were published today, March 12th, in the journal Nature. The worthless-looking diamond encloses a tiny piece of olivine material, the green one you saw, called ringwoodite, the blue one that you saw. And it's the first time the mineral has been found on Earth's surface in anything other than meteorites. Okay? Now we have it found from the deep earth or laboratories. Ringwoodite only forms under extreme pressure, such as crushing load, about 320 miles deep into the mantle. Most of the Earth's volume is mantle, the rock layer between the crust and the core. Too deep to drill. The mantle's composition is a mystery. I love this word he uses, leavened by two clues. Meteorites, the hunks of rock heaved up by volcanoes. First, scientists think the composition of the Earth's mantle is similar to that of meteorites called chondrites, which are chiefly made of olivine, the green. Second, lava belched by volcanoes sometimes taps the mantle, bringing up chunks of odd minerals that hint at the intense heat and pressure olivine endures in the bowels of the earth. In recent decades, researchers have also recreated mantle settings in laboratories, zapping olivine with lasers, shooting minerals with massive guns, and squeezing rocks between diamond anvils to mimic the Earth's interior. These laboratory studies suggest that olivine morphs into a variety of forms corresponding to the depth at which it is found. And then it goes on in the article, says, for example, 323 to 410 miles deep between two sharp speed breaks, which is speed breaks are where earthquake waves go through, olivine is thought to become ringwoodite. So it's very deep. It's the green ringwoodite. As it comes up, it releases from some of the pressure and becomes, or the olivine becomes ringwoodite. This olivine is ringwoodite at its depth, a layer called the mantle transition zone. Why do I say this? Just to shorten this, it's this guy Kepler noted that it is possible that a volcanic eruption that brought up a deep diamond to Earth's surface may have a sample of unusually water-rich part of the mantle. In essence, we have tectonic plates pushing water into the Earth's mantle as they move like that, pushing down, pushing up, and it's compressing the water to density of diamonds. Imagine the release of that when it's broken up, and all of that from the deep comes up and is released with the ocean water. Thank you, scientists. You helped us out, right? It gets better. The door of the ark and the side. I have a lot to say about the door. Genesis 6:16 says, you shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark on its side. You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks. Anyone think of something else that has 3 levels that's created? The temple. 1 Kings 6:8 says the doorway for the middle story was on the right side of the temple. So the door of the ark is on the side of the temple. The door of the ark the door for the ark was on the side of the ark, and the doorway for the middle story of the temple was on the side as well in the middle story, in the middle to the third. This middle is going to become important even more so. Matthew 25:10.
And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut.
The door was shut. So in Genesis 4:6-7, the Lord had said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? If you do not do well, sin lies at the door." The door is becoming extremely important. So we have the door on the side of the ark. What's on one side of the ark? Death, sin, Torahlessness. What's on the opposite side? Life. That's what's on the other side. The door and the placement of doors becomes extremely important in Genesis, and I'm going to none of these are up here, so I'm going to, the Lord appeared to Abraham in Mamre as he was sitting at the tent door. It's the place, it becomes the place where God meets man so many times. Lot went out through the doorway and shut the door behind him. The door of the ark is shut and no one can get in. And in this parable of the virgins, while they're away buying things, the bridegroom comes and the door is shut and it is not open. It is shut just as much like the ark door. The Lord shuts the door and it is not open. He separates life from death. In Sodom, men reached with their hands and tried to pull Lot. The men that had visiting Lot reached and pulled him inside of his house, inside the doorway. And they shut the door. These holy men shut the door. And so what happened was, they struck them blind so they could not find the door. A lot of our world has been blinded. They cannot see the doorway. They cannot see the door. They cannot see the way to life because they have willfully chosen death. In Exodus, the blood from the basin is struck on the two doorposts. In Passover, the same thing. Why? Because on one side of the door is death, and death cannot pass through the blood because that's where life dwells. When a servant decides to stay with his master in Exodus 21 and serve his master, he's brought to the door. And they pierce his ear with an awl. And it says, and he shall serve him forever. So once he comes to that door and his ear is pierced with an awl and a ring is put in that servant's ear as a sign of his loyalty to the master, that he'll serve him forever. Then he enters the door a different person with all rights into the house. When Moshe would walk to the temple, each man stood at his tent door until he entered into the temple. And then they entered their own house, and Moshe entered the tabernacle. And it says, and all the people rose and worshiped, each man in his tent door. Psalms 141:3 says, "Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips." The door of my lips. Why? Because this thing right here has the ability to speak life into someone, but it also has a capacity of death, speaking death into someone. Because Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat of its fruit." So we think about those who never have a good word to say about anyone. Sadly, they will eat of the fruit of their own words someday. In Revelation, the angel of the church in Philadelphia, it's very difficult to think of Philadelphia in a godly way now, but it's a different city. It says, "These things says he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the key of David, he who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens. I know your works. See, I have set before you an open door, and no one can shut it. For you have a little strength. For you have a little strength, have kept my word, and have not denied my name." So the door is open and cannot be shut for them. In Genesis 2, it also says that the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. Now, here goes the mind of Darrell, and I need you to keep up with me, okay? I want you to remember that verse. Luke 17:27, which we should have done earlier, but thank you, Paul.
They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage, until the day that Noach entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all.
So this is Yeshua speaking. So we know that when the earth is destroyed again, their life is going to be going just normal for most of the people. They're going to be buying and selling. They're going to be partying. And then the door is going to be shut, and it will not be open. John 19:34. This is where the door in the middle, and like I said, you're going to have to keep up with the mind of Darrell here. This is difficult. One of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and immediately blood and water came out. Blood, symbolic of the atonement. Water, symbolic of sanctification. Before we read this next one, in Genesis 2, it says, "He took one of Adam's ribs and closed up his flesh. Then the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, he made into a woman." So out of the side of man came life, just like the ark. When the ark came to rest, the side door pops open and out comes life from the side of the ark. Adam, the first Adam, the side of his body is opened up, and from it comes life, woman. The side door of the temple, life on one side. Exodus 39:22 to
Robe of the ephod, of woven work of all blue. And there was an opening in the middle of the robe, like the opening in a coat of mail, with a woven binding all around the opening, so that it would not tear.
I'm not losing you, am I? Okay. So this is the garment for the priest. And that word, it says it in this verse, it says there was an opening. In some translations, it says a hole or whatever. It says it's like mail, chain mail. Now, mail was designed, not armor, mail was designed where the bearer could put it on himself. Put an arm through the mail, throw it over, come around, throw the arm in, pick up a strap, pull it over. But then we had to close the right side. That's how chainmail was closed. And in that verse, it says that there was an opening in the middle of the robe, like the opening in a coat of mail, with a woven binding all around the opening so that it would not tear, would not fray. So it was sewn to remain open. They didn't close it. Because Yeshua was lanced in his side, and that remained open so that Thomas could stick his hand in it. The robe worn by the priesthood for thousands of years before Yeshua was crucified, that robe was symbolic of Yeshua. Parallels and patterns. Everything means something. It all means something. Numbers 20:11. Then Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly. And the congregation and their animals drank. He strikes the rock twice. He was actually commanded to speak to the rock, but he struck it twice. And you've heard me teach on this before. And then water comes out. Abba was angry that he had struck the rock twice because that's not what he told him to do. But those two strikes to get water out are the two entities required, my belief, I can't find another reason for it, the two entities necessary to execute the Messiah, called for by the unbelieving the Pharisees, authorized by law by the Romans. Those two would have to collaborate. And of course, we know the water came out with blood from Yeshua's womb. Blood for atonement, water for sanctification. And he's striking the rock, the cornerstone rock, the rock of our salvation. Everything means something. John 20:20 says, and when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. And John 20:27 goes on to say, then he said to Thomas, reach your finger in here. I don't know about you. I don't know about that. And look at my hands, and reach your hand here and put it in my side. Do not be unbelieving, but believing. Why did he ask him to do that? Number one, first of all, what is believing and unbelieving here? Believing is taking action. Unbelieving is not taking action on what you believe. You know, our modern world says, I believe. They think it's a state of mind. Oh, I believe it. It's a cerebral activity. But believing in this case requires action on Thomas's part. Why put your hand in his side? Because it's symbolic that within me is life. Reach into me, grab a hold of life. The wind and the sea. Genesis 8:1.
Then God remembered Noach and every living thing and all the animals that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided.
God made a wind. Proverbs 34.
Who has ascended into heaven or descended? Who has gathered the wind in his fists? Who has bound the waters in a garment? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? And what is his son's name, if you know?
What is his son's name? You know. To gather the waters in a garment, the wind in his fist. The two elements that came to play in Noach, in the ark. Matthew 8:26-27.
But he said to them, Why are you fearful, O you of little faith? Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. So the men marveled, saying, Who can this be, that even the winds and the sea obey him?
Who can this be? And obviously this is Yeshua in the boat with the Talmudim, the disciples. And the wind comes up, tossing the waves. And he speaks, and he stops it. Acts 2:1-2 says, when the day of Shavuot had fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled the whole house where they were sitting. It's interesting, it doesn't say that the wind passed through the house, it filled it. The Ruach HaKodesh comes, in this case, in a mighty rushing wind. Ephesians 4:13 says, till we all come to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Messiah, that we should no longer be children tossed to and fro, think of the ark, and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men and the cunning craftiness of deceitful plotting. Every wind. See, the enemy has a counterfeit for the Ruach HaKodesh. He has his own wind. And he intends to toss us to and fro with doctrines that divide us, cause us to get into conflict with each other, to deceive us. And we should not be tossed to and fro. And he says it's deceitful plotting to do this. Ridiculous arguments, useless arguments over peripheral things of our faith. And there are many peripheral things in this walk. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of nuances of this walk that some of us agree on, some of us don't. But when the wind blows, when we start bloviating and getting angry and trying to get our point across in a forceful way, then it doesn't look like the love that we are supposed to have for each one, all of us. James 1:6 for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. That's doubt. In Jonah 2:3-5, thank you, Paul.
For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your billows and your waves passed over me. Then I said, I have been cast out of your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The waters surrounded me, even to my soul. The deep closed around me. Weeds were wrapped around my head.
It's very interesting that after the destruction of the earth and the salvation of the generation of Noah, we would have another sea story with wind being tossed overboard. However, there's no ark this time. There's no ark. But God provided a way for Jonah. It's very, I never could understand the correlation of the fish. I'll be honest with you. I can't explain that one. I tried to track that one down. But God provided a way for delivering Jonah using a fish. But it's almost as if he says, here's the flood and the wind that saves the generation of Noach. And then he brings another story of being tossed in the sea without an ark. Is Abba trying to reinforce something here in our understanding? I think so. The mountains were covered. Genesis 7:20 says, the waters prevailed 15 cubits upward, and the mountains were covered in the flood. In Jonah 2:6, Jonah is tossed overboard, and it says, I went down to the moorings of the mountains. He went so deep into the sea that he went to the base of the mountains. So he's in the ocean so deep, the mountains are towering over him. The earth with its bars closed behind me forever, yet you have brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. The raven and the dove. Genesis 8:7-9.
Then he sent out a raven which kept going to and fro until the waters had dried up from the earth. He also sent out from himself a dove to see if the waters had receded from the face of the ground. But the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot, and she returned into the ark to him, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and drew her into the ark to himself.
So he sends out a raven, an unclean bird. And the raven goes to and fro. Now it's in the writing here, Moshe, in the writing of concerning this, how does he know the raven goes to and fro? Because he doesn't go far. He sees him going to and fro. Why doesn't the raven come back? Because death still reigns over the earth. The decaying flesh is food for the unclean raven. And the raven has different priorities. His priority is death. That's food for him, just like the enemy. Death is food for Hasatan. Death is what he dines on. So the dove goes out, and it says she has no place to put the sole of her feet. And she returns into the ark to him. And he puts out his hand and took her and drew her into the ark to himself. To himself. The dove returns to its master to find its comfort. But then the dove goes out again, the olive leaf. Genesis 8:11 says, the dove came to him in the evening, and behold, a freshly plucked olive leaf was in her mouth. And Noah knew that the waters had receded from the earth. Now, if you grew up where I grew up, you'll know that trees can survive in a flood where they're totally submerged. A lot of trees can. They can survive. But this dove goes out one time and comes back without anything, without an olive leaf. The dove comes back, goes out and comes back second time with the olive leaf. What does the olive branch represent? His people, Israel. So the first time Yeshua comes here, he leaves. But the second time, he's taken his people. The olive tree. And how do we know that the olive branch or the olive tree is representative? It's all the prophets tell us. This is concerning Israel on judgment. Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, says, the Lord called your name green olive tree, lovely and of good fruit. But with the noise of a great tumult, he has kindled fire on it, and its branches are broken. This is Israel in disobedience. Hosea talks about Israel restored. And he says, his branches shall spread, his beauty shall be like an olive tree, and his fragrance like Lebanon. Everything means something. Even from the time that the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, not Ararat mountain, it was the mountains of Ararat, which is roughly in modern day Armenia. He was thinking about his people, restoring his people. You know, the dove did not come back with an olive branch and something else. He did not come back with a Gentile branch. He did not come back with anything but an olive branch. And of course, we know, and we talked last week about we being, you know, Rab Shaul talks about being grafted in to the olive branch. So we grafted into the olive branch are represented by an olive leaf in that dove's beak as far back as the flood. Everything means something. He goes on to say in Hosea, those who dwell under his shadow is Israel. That's the subject of what he's talking about. If you go back and he says, his branches shall spread, his beauty shall be like an olive tree, his fragrance like Lebanon. Those who dwell under his shadow shall return. His people will return. They shall be revived like grain. This is not Yeshua. He's always lived. He's always been alive. So this is Israel. He has no need to be revived. And it shall grow like a vine. Their scent shall be like the wine of Lebanon. His people will be sweet. There will be a sweet presence on the earth. And we all know that the day is coming when 10 men will grab onto the cloak of one Jew and say, show me. I think we're beginning to see some of that. To go or to come? Genesis 6:18.
But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you.
So that word there, it says you shall go, is ubayat. Ubata. Sorry, I got a dyslexic there. It doesn't mean go. Anyone know what next week's Torah portion is? Lech lecha. That's and you shall go. But that's not the word. Ubata is and you came. Genesis 7:1.
And the Lord said to Noach, come into the ark, you and all your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation.
Remember the word earlier at the very beginning? It said window, and it was a window of radiance, and we talked about light, and that's what it meant. So none of this is not translated, go into the ark. Now think about this for a minute with me, please. Come into the ark. What is the light? What is in the ark? Come into the ark. So where was Yeshua in all this? In the ark? Perhaps. He was the window. He was the light that gave them light. You know, it makes a lot of sense because we can't survive without light. Eventually your immune system will crash. Your circadian rhythm is dependent upon light. And 40 days and 40 nights is enough time for your immune system to begin to crash without light. But God provided light to them in the ark. And light. And what is light? You know, he put his bow in the clouds. What is a rainbow but refracted light? It's a sign of the light that provides. And that word that was used there is boata, come you. He's beckoning, clearly someone is beckoning Noach and his generation and his sons and their wives into the ark. Come in. So that door, when it was shut on the side of the ark, was held closed, not pushed closed. And it separated life from death. John 11:25-26, Yeshua said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me. I'm going to read this again, but I want you from here on out, when somebody says, I believe in something. Think of it this way. Thomas believed in Yeshua enough to stick his hand in him. He says, be believing. Do not be unbelieving. So I want you to have a new picture in your mind about believing in enough to stick your hand, to invest yourself into it. Do you think it was a fearful event for Thomas to stick his hand in Yeshua's ribcage? It would me, especially someone that is still able to talk to me, you know, not laying on a table, but to stick your hand in there, it's a fearful thing. To do what Yeshua is asking him to do. There's fear in this. There's fear in all of this. There's unpleasantness in all of this. But the reward is life. Oh, I didn't finish reading it, did I? Yeshua said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? In Matthew 11:28 it says, come to me. Just like the beckoning into the ark. Come to me, come in me, come into me and have life. So, you know, if we're going to walk like him, if we're going to enter into him and walk like him, he suffered some pretty unpleasant things walking on this, some from his own people. We are going to experience that as well. as we walk with him and like him. Hebrews 11:7.
By faith, Noach, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith.
Looking for patterns. So by faith, Noah being divinely warned of things not seen. We do not know. When we come into this walk, we do not know what it has in store for us. We can't see it. We can't see over the mountain. We can't see through all of that. But we have to move with godly fear. Like a friend of mine told me a long time ago, just as I believe I was about to come into this walk, she goes, why, I'm not going to tell you what we were talking about, but she goes, why haven't you done whatever? And I said, honestly, I'm afraid. She goes, good, do it afraid. Do it afraid. Move with godly fear. Be fearful, but move. Be Thomas. Thomas, he's fearful, but he moved. He acted. Put one foot in front of the other and move. Galatians 3:26-27 says, for you are all sons of God through faith in Messiah Yeshua. For as many as you were baptized, passed through the water, like Noah, into Messiah, you've put on Messiah. That's the ark. That was the ark. And it is still our ark. And on one side of this is death, and it's right there. It's a cypress plank thickness between life and death for Noah. It was in the temple as well. My hope is to make Torah detectives out of you. To not look at words and think that they have no meaning, they're innocuous or boring. Things like a door, a side, they all have meaning. The entire scripture, everything in the old is a shadow of the new. Everything. And there's no wonder he says, not one jot or one tittle shall pass before all is fulfilled. And I'll tell you, not one concept of these words is unimportant as we walk in the ways of our Messiah. It all has importance. So when you look at the book of the Torah portion for Noach from here on out, I hope you see Yeshua. He's the ark. He's the whole. Not only is he within, but he settles the wind and the sea without. He's all of that. Thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.